Ma'am.
I understand that there were several samples and other things that were brought back to you for your scientific observation and pleasure. What particular one stands out as perhaps one of your favorites, or one that you've learned the most from? Or
The lady asking me of all of the curiosities and the relics that were returned from the expedition, in fact, that were sent back from the expedition long before it ever returned, of what did I fancy the most? I would regard perhaps the great elk horns, the horns of what they call the wapiti, the horns of what they call the great mountain goat, that of the moose were most attractive to me and remain most astounding. All of these, along with a buffalo robe that had been worn by the great sachems of various Indian tribes westward, were gathered up and sent back in a shipload of artifacts and specimens and compositions of soil, charts that had been drawn up of the confluences of various waterways into the Missouri, sent out from Fort Mandan that winter of '04-05, arriving in the mouth of the Potomac September of '05, and having been received they at the President's house were almost immediately put on display in the entrance hall of the President's house. And to thereby validate suppositions, merely scientific suppositions in my notes on the state of Virginia that I had drawn up nearly 20 years previous in refutation of what already had been written and printed by the Comte de Buffon, Monsieur Leclerc, whose natural history, published in the 1760s in France, was wont to purport that the flora and fauna in North America is inferior to anything found throughout the kingdoms of Europe. And this was due to the fact that the general climate in North America was cool and damp, while the general climate throughout Europe was warm and dry. A clear indication that the Comte de Buffon has never been to Virginia in the summertime, is it not? But madam, when I served as Minister Plenipotentiary for France, I made certain that I brought across the ocean a specimen of fauna, natural fauna here in this nation. It was a great elk, a moose you might call it, that was taken by Mr. Sullivan, Governor Sullivan of New Hampshire, and its bones were stripped and dried, and therefore before the Comte de Buffon, this 2 years before he passed away, I unraveled this magnificent form of animal life, quite astounding him. So therefore, again, to validate what I had represented to the Comte de Buffon, as well as all important peoples who came to visit our nation and would pay me a visit in the President's house, let alone our congressmen. I provided these curiosities there on the walls of the foyer, the entrance hall of the President's house. So I think all of those together, including enjoying to wear that buffalo robe, even at, you might call state gatherings and dinners in the President's house, was a pleasure of mine. Particularly on occasion when various congressmen would come visiting me in order to seek an appointment or particular position, that I would begin to introduce them to some of the Indian relics and curiosities on the wall, and after several moments would have them so beguiled that they would forget the reason why they came to see me, which is always a pleasure in the Office of Administration.